Have you ever noticed that you can change your schedule, change your friends, change your goals, and still wake up with the same noisy mind? And have you ever wondered why the mind can feel like it is stuck on one channel, replaying the same worries, the same regrets, the same doubts, even when you are trying so hard to move forward? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to talk about what it really means to clean your mind. Not in a magical way, not in a fake positive way, but in a way that actually changes how your attention works, how your emotions move, how your habits form, and how your future gets shaped. Two ideas will guide everything you hear today. First, a dirty mind is not a bad mind. It is a conditioned mind, trained by repetition to return to certain thoughts and emotions, and that conditioning can be changed. Second, real mental cleaning is not about forcing thoughts to stop. It is about stepping out of identification, training awareness, and changing the emotional baseline that keeps recycling the same patterns. Let me tell this as a story, because the mind does not change through concepts alone. It changes through lived experience. In the middle of ordinary life, there was a person who felt like they were always carrying mental residue. They would have a decent day. Then at night the mind would start scrolling through worry. They would have a good conversation. Then later the mind would replay one sentence and turn it into a problem. They would make progress on something. Then the mind would whisper that it is not enough. It is too late. Someone else is ahead. You will lose it. You will fail. On the outside, the person looked fine. They were functional. They were responsible. They were even respected. But inside, the inner world felt cluttered, like a room that is technically livable, but full of piles you keep stepping around. And the strangest part was this: the person could not remember when the clutter began. It felt like it had always been there, like the mind had always been messy, like they had always been their thoughts. One day, the person heard a phrase that sounded bold, almost too bold. Clean your mind. Literally clean it. Not by pretending, but by changing what you repeatedly think and feel until the old pattern loses power. The person reacted the way most intelligent people react. They felt skeptical. They thought, if it were that simple, everyone would do it. They thought, my problems are real. My stress is real. My history is real. My responsibilities are real. And all of that was true. But another truth was also present. The person was not only suffering from life, they were suffering from their relationship to life. A relationship built out of automatic thinking and emotional habit. So the person started watching their mind like someone watching a machine. Not judging, just observing. They noticed the mind ran the same routines. Morning routine of worry. Midday routine of comparison. Evening routine of regret. Night routine of scanning. Even when the topics changed, the emotional flavors stayed similar. Urgency, restlessness, self-judgment. Then the person noticed something deeper. The mind was not just thinking. The body was feeling. The body was producing the same emotional chemistry again and again. And the mind was using those body feelings as proof that the thoughts were true. This was huge, because it showed the loop clearly. Emotion triggers thought. Thought triggers emotion. Both feed each other. And over time, this becomes identity. When the person felt anxious, the mind said, I am anxious. Therefore danger is real. Therefore I must worry. When the person felt disappointed, the mind said, I am disappointed. Therefore life is against me. Therefore I must replay what went wrong. When the person felt insecure, the mind said, I am insecure. Therefore I must compare. Therefore I must chase approval. This is how a mind gets dirty. Not because thoughts are evil, but because attention is repeatedly pulled into the same grooves, and the nervous system learns to live there. So the person asked a new question. Not what is wrong with me, but what is my mind practicing every day? Because what you practice becomes you. Not in a mystical way, in a mechanical way. Repetition creates grooves. Grooves create default reactions. Default reactions create consequences. Consequences create more emotional energy. That energy strengthens the groove. That is how a pattern becomes a life. Now here is where the idea of cleaning becomes practical. Cleaning a room is not about yelling at the mess. It is about separating what matters from what is just clutter. Then removing what does not belong. Then repeating until the room stays clear. Cleaning the mind is similar. You cannot clean it by hating it. You clean it by seeing what is clutter, seeing what is conditioned noise, and then training attention to stop feeding the noise. The person started by noticing the biggest mental dirt, the constant commentary. The mind commented on everything. How they looked, what people meant, what might happen, what could go wrong, what they should have done, what they should do, what they might lose, what they must fix. At first, the person believed the commentary was necessary. It felt like protection. But when they watched honestly, they saw that most commentary was not problem-solving. It was selfing. It was turning every moment into me. My image, my risk, my future, my control. So the person tried an experiment that felt strange at first. They practiced moments of no commentary, not forcing thought to stop, but not feeding it with belief in continuation. A thought would arise, and instead of answering it with another thought, they would simply notice it. This is the first tool of mental cleaning. Recognition without continuation. When you do this, something surprising happens. The mind still produces thoughts, but the chain becomes shorter. The mind is like a machine that expects you to keep pressing the same button. When you stop pressing, the machine loses momentum. The second tool the person practiced was shifting from head to body. Because mental dirt is often stuck because it is not only thought. It is stored emotion. The body holds it as tension, as tightness, as restlessness, as a low-level bracing. So the person began to feel the inner body, not as a medical scan, but as simple sensation. Hands, feet, belly, chest, throat, face, breath. At first, they noticed how tense they were. It was almost embarrassing. They realized they had been living with a clenched jaw so long it felt normal. They had been holding their shoulders up so long it felt like their shape. They had been breathing shallow so long it felt like their personality. This is how deep conditioning goes. It hides inside normal. So the person began to soften, not by force, but by awareness. Notice jaw, soften a little. Notice shoulders, soften a little. Notice belly, soften a little. Notice breath, allow it. This may sound small, but it is not small, because the nervous system learns through experience. When the body softens, the mind becomes less urgent. When the mind becomes less urgent, thoughts become less sticky. When thoughts become less sticky, you can choose more clearly. The third tool was the most challenging. The person practiced not rehearsing the past and not rehearsing the future, at least not compulsively, because rumination is mental dirt. It is repetitive, sticky, and it stains the present moment. The person noticed that the mind had favored stains, a mistake, an embarrassment, a conflict, a rejection, I regret. The mind would replay it as if replay could change it. But replay did not change anything. It only refreshed the emotional chemistry again and again, training the body to keep the same stress state alive. So the person practiced a new response to replay. When the replay started, they labeled it replay, not with shame, just recognition. Then they returned to sensation. Feet, breath, sounds, space. At first, this felt like doing nothing. But then they noticed something. The replay only survived when they fed it attention plus belief. When they withdrew attention, the replay weakened. It returned, yes, but weaker. This was training. Now the person started to understand a deeper principle. If the mind is dirty, It is because it is full of old emotional energy that keeps pulling attention into matching thoughts. If your baseline is fear, your mind finds fearful thoughts. If your baseline is resentment, your mind finds insulting interpretation. If your baseline is shame, your mind finds proof you are not enough. So cleaning the mind requires changing the emotional baseline. This is where the person realized why willpower alone failed them for years. Willpower tries to fight thoughts while the body is still producing the same emotional chemistry. That is like trying to change a song while the radio is locked on one station. You can argue with the lyrics all you want, but the station keeps playing. So the person tried a different approach. Instead of starting with thoughts, they started with state. They asked, what state am I practicing every day? They noticed they were practicing stress. They were practicing urgency. They were practicing self-judgment. They were practicing control. So they began practicing a new state for short periods. Consistently, they would sit quietly and recall a feeling of gratitude, or appreciation, or calm, or compassion, not as fantasy, but as a real bodily feeling. They would breathe and let the body taste that state. At first, it felt forced. Then it felt slightly real. Then it felt more natural. Not because life became perfect, but because the nervous system can learn. This is another key of mental cleaning. You must teach the body a new emotional home. Because if you do not, the body will keep returning to the old home. And the mind will keep producing thoughts that match. Now, the person faced a fear. The fear was that if they stopped thinking obsessively, they would become careless. This fear is common. Many people believe their worry is their responsibility. They think worrying proves they care. They think worrying prevents bad outcome. But worry is not the same as wise action. Wise action is clear. It takes a step and stops. Worry loops endlessly, pretending to solve, but actually feeding anxiety. So the person practiced a clear distinction. If action is needed, do the next step. If no action is needed right now, return to present. This simple distinction became a mental filter. It removed clutter. It removed fake urgency. Over time, the person noticed they became more effective, not less, because they wasted less energy in loops. Their attention became sharper. They could focus longer. They recovered faster after setbacks. This is the irony. A cleaner mind is not weaker. It is stronger. Now, there is another layer of cleaning the person discovered. And it relates to identity, karma, and destiny. The person realized that most mental dirt comes from the illusion that every thought is me. Every emotion is me. Every reaction is me. This illusion creates constant defensiveness. If a thought says you are failing, it feels like you are failing. If an emotion says you are unsafe, it feels like you are unsafe. If a memory says you were humiliated, it feels like you are humiliated again now. So the person practiced stepping back into awareness. They asked one question again and again. What is aware of this thought right now? What is aware of this emotion right now? What is aware of this body sensation right now? Each time they asked, they did not answer with words. They used the question to shift attention into the knowing itself. And each time, they felt something stable. The thought moved. The awareness remained. The emotion rose. The awareness remained. The sensation changed. The awareness remained. This recognition is the deepest cleaning, because it removes the core confusion. The confusion that you are the content of the mind. When that confusion begins to dissolve, you do not have to fight every thought. You do not have to clean each thought individually like scrubbing every tile by hand. You clean at the level of identity. You stop merging. Now the person began to notice how this changed their life, not just their meditation. They became less triggered by small things. A delay still annoyed them sometimes, but it did not ruin the day. A criticism still stung, but it did not become a week of rumination. A fear still arose, But it did not turn into panic behavior. They also became kinder. Because when you stop living inside constant self-defense, your heart has space. You listen better. You speak less harshly. You do not need to win every moment to feel real. This is compassion arising naturally from a cleaner mind. And this is where cause and effect becomes obvious. When the mind is cluttered, you react. Reaction creates consequences. Consequences create regret. Regret creates more clutter. When the mind is cleaner, you respond. Response creates better consequences. Better consequences create confidence. Confidence creates more calm. Calm keeps the mind clean. This is karma in everyday language. Now the person faced a serious test. Something real went wrong. A loss, a conflict, a failure, a disappointment. Something that would normally have dirtied the mind instantly with endless replay. The first wave was still intense. The body reacted. The heart tightened. The mind started building a story. But the person had been training. So they did not try to skip pain. They allowed pain. They felt it in the body. They breathed. They stayed present. They noticed the mind trying to turn pain into identity and prophecy. And they refused to feed it. They took practical steps where needed. Then they returned to awareness. Days later, they noticed something almost unbelievable. The event still mattered, but it did not contaminate their entire inner life. It did not become a permanent stain. They realized a clean mind is not a mind that never experiences pain. It is a mind that does not cling to pain and create unnecessary suffering. This is wisdom. And wisdom is freedom. Now let me share a reflection that often makes this feel real. A dirty mind is like a lens covered in fingerprints. You look through it and everything looks distorted. The world looks threatening. People look insulting. The future looks dangerous. The past looks like a prison. Cleaning the mind is cleaning the lens. The world does not become perfect, but you see more clearly. You can respond more accurately. You waste less energy fighting ghosts. And there is another secret here. Many people want to clean the mind so they can finally control life and never feel fear again. But that desire itself becomes new dirt, because it is another form of grasping. Real cleaning is simpler. You practice presence. You practice awareness. You practice letting go. You practice compassion. You practice wise action. And you accept impermanence. Things change. Feelings change. Outcomes change. The mind changes. The goal is not to freeze life. The goal is to be free inside it. Now, as we close, I want to speak to you directly. If you feel like your mind is messy, you are not alone. Most people are living inside mental clutter they do not even see. And the first step is not to hate yourself for it. The first step is to notice. The moment you notice the clutter, awareness is already present. That awareness is the cleaning power. Start with one small moment today. One moment of not continuing the thought. One moment of feeling the body. One moment of breathing without rushing. One moment of asking what is aware of this. These moments are small, but they are seeds. Seeds accumulate, and that accumulation becomes a different future. I have watched people change through this kind of training. Someone who lived in worry learned to feel the body and stop feeding story. Their sleep improved. Someone who carried resentment learned to notice the loop and let it pass. Their relationships softened. Someone who chased validation learned to rest as awareness. Their confidence became real. This is not magic. It is practice. Thank you for being here with me today. Now I want to invite you to share in the comments. What is the biggest mental dirt your mind repeats most often? And what do you think it is trying to protect you from? And if you want more long-form teachings like this, support the channel by subscribing, liking, and commenting. Your support helps these ideas reach people who are tired of being trapped in their own noise and ready to come home to a cleaner mind and a steadier heart. Until next time, keep practicing, keep returning, and remember that the mind can be trained, and awareness is already here.